I resumed, Chair would like to acknowledge the presence of our invited guests, namely Secretary Abad, Secretary Purisima, Secretary Balisacan, Deputy Governor Gunigundo, Treasurer De Leon, and Deputy Commissioner Tan. Nakatalikod pa yung name card ni Commissioner Kim. Coming soon. Pag-uusapan din natin yung traffic maya-maya. Thank you for once again inviting. We were simply awaiting the arrival of Senator Ejercito. Siya na lang po ang magtatanong maliban sa akin. But while we're awaiting his arrival, may I take up some of the few points raised in yesterday's hearing? Una po, for Secretary Purisima, sir, on the MRT Unprogrammed Fund, can you give us a breakdown of the 54? Kung alin doon yung para sa DBP at Land Bank, kung alin doon yung para sa common shares, what you call the legal interest in the company itself, and the rough amounts that's needed for that purpose, because as you know, hindi lang naman po excess of revenue targets yung unprogrammed fund, it includes borrowings, and as I understand, the EO authorizing you to so negotiate specifically mentioned that the funds for this purpose will be sourced from borrowings. So as soon as we approve it, without any need of congressional action, you can already go ahead and proceed with reacquisition of both the economic interest and the legal interest of MRT3. Yung breakdown lang po so that we can get it. So it won't be or appear as a lump sum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we submit it in writing? I don't have the
Yes po,
breakdown.
not necessary now. Please submit it to us na lang po for our information and reference. Second point, Secretary Balisacan, you informed us yesterday on the need for R&D. Secretary Abad, we will work closely with you to try to increase the R&D budget for agriculture. And having mentioned that, can you explain for the record the marked increase of the MPBF from about 53-54 billion in 2014, knowing how big the savings was in MPBF in 2013, amounting to about 30 billion? What explains the rise of the MPBF to 118 billion 142 plus million?
Well, the biggest increase there, Mr. Chairman, has to do with the one increase of the PEI from 5,000 to 1 month. That's about 34 billion additional.
So from 54 plus 30, that will be 94. May naiiwan pa po ako in the 118 of approximately 24 billion.
Yes, and then of course you have to anticipate the increases in performance-based bonuses that we project next year because of the additional.
You're assuming that the
manpower.
departments will perform.
Well, just in case. Because there's also additional, like for example, we're hiring 40,000 new teachers, so that will mean additional bonuses for them also.
We will compute that as well, Secretary Abad, because as we did, if you recall, last budget for 2014, we recomputed the allocation for teachers because the budget proposed for teachers was computed on the basis of a January to December salary.
Which we changed subsequently to
Yes,
March.
which we changed.
To
So we
March.
might
With
change
your,
it as well.
upon your
Yung computation nyo po ba ngayon, March na? Hindi. January pa rin yata yan eh.
No, hindi na January definitely. I think it's March. April.
April pa.
Yes,
So we will
because
look into that.
we learned from our experience this year. Mr.
We will look
Chair.
into that as well. Before I yield the floor to Senator Estrada.
The other reason for the increase, the substantial, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chairman, has to do with the rationalization. Because we anticipate differentials in the rationalization. That amounts to about 6.7 billion. And also, we have decided to put regular staffing in all DOH hospitals instead of hiring job
Contractuals.
orders and contractuals. And that will amount to something like 9.2 billion. So right there and there, you have about 16 billion more additional, Mr. Chairman.
May balanse pa akong mga 8 billion.
And then you have to consider the subsistence allowance increase, Mr. Chairman.
But that's about
12.
12. Yes,
Yeah.
but if it is approved.
Yes, it is.
Two more points on inflation, Deputy Governor. How does the BSP address problems in relation to inflation if it is not related to liquidity? For example, the inflation that has been driving up prices in the country has been brought about by the port congestion.
We do realize, Mr. Chairman, that at this point, inflation is driven mainly by supply side.
The supply side, yes.
That's right. However, most of the time, if the supply side pressures continues to be persistent, there's a possibility that this pressure spill over to demand, as well as inflation expectations. So it is important that the BSP should implement preemptive measure. And we have done four measures, Mr. Chairman. The first one, we decided to, increase the reserve requirement by 200 basis points on 2 rounds. We decided to do that because we
It's
observed...
preemptive.
It's preemptive. At the same time, Mr. Chairman, that was also to address the issue of excess liquidity. There is excess liquidity because we've seen how liquidity has been growing by 28%, that is in May. In June, it came down to 23% on account of the
The
two
increased
measures
reserve
that we
requirements.
implemented. That's right, Mr. Chairman. And secondly, we did a 25 basis points increase in the SDA, as well as a 25 basis points increase in our policy rate. Now, these two last measures were also preemptive measures in the sense that interest rates in the Philippines are historically very low. When interest rates are very low, Mr. Chairman, there are also risks to the macroeconomy. One, there is mispricing of risk. Second, it is possible that because interest rates are very low, the possibility of liquidity moving away from the productive sectors onto the asset market, like equities and real estate, that is a possibility. So those four measures, Mr. Chairman, are preemptive in nature. We were addressing the issue of liquidity and low interest rates, and at the same time to deliver to the market the signal that we will continue to be vigilant in terms of ensuring that inflation remains on target, which is 3 to 5% for 2014 and 2 to 4% for 2015.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if the newspaper reports are accurate, the highest inflation rate that you recorded was in July at 4.9?
That's right. For 2014, Mr.
For
Chairman.
2014, precisely.
That's 4.9, Mr. Chairman, which is uncomfortably close to the upper end of the target, which is 5%. Now, if the market sees that this is breaching towards or reaching towards the upper end of the target, and it's going to be prolonged, the market psychology can also bring in inflation expectations that may be disanchored. So this is a preemptive measure, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Balisacan, how much is this entire port congestion problem costing us? Have you looked into the numbers?
There are certain indicators that, at least for industrial goods, that are quite substantial. But
Sir, both for
inflation-
imports and exports, ha?
Yes, sir. But for the inflation that we have seen in recent years, sir, that has come mainly from food, upstick in food inflation, and we believe that and that pressure has been coming even before the port issue became more serious in latter
May
months.
nakausap po ako mga importers, ang estimate po nila, tumaas yung kosto nila by 10 to 15% because of the port congestion problem. Dahil kailangan daw po nila mag-hire ng panibagong barko, nagbabayad sila ng demorahe, mas tumaas yung presyo ng trucking, not to mention the fact that some shippers already refused for a certain period of time to come here to the Philippines.
We have heard of those reports in our meetings with
In fact,
industry players.
Lilia de Lima, in fact, even sounded the alarm bells by saying that some have closed shop already because they failed to meet the orders for their exports in PEZA zones. Yes, Secretary Purisima.
May I give the
A solution?
Well, we are solving the problem. There are several moves that we're doing. First, we agreed on chartering sweeper vessels that would sweep empties and long staying cargo out of the Port of Manila to Subic. The sweeper vessel that was chartered by the port operators just arrived this morning at 7 o'clock. So that process will start already. Second, we're working with companies that are using the port as storage facilities, no, to move their cargo out. No, there are about 12,000 containers of that have been cleared through customs with gate pass, but are being kept in the port. No, and this adding to the congestion. So I think by the end of the month, PPA will be increasing the storage charges, and after a certain number of days, we'll move this cargo out of the Port of Manila to possibly Subic also at the cost of the shippers. Third, all the agencies involved are operating on a 24/7 basis. So we met, in fact, after the committee hearing yesterday, the business groups were here and we met with them, and they promised to take advantage of the Sunday-Monday window because there is no transaction.
We talked about that. Ghost town nga daw po yan. And I think that has been
Yes,
resolved. Former Yusek Ordonez informed me yesterday.
Well, based on last Sunday's numbers, it still has not been, and that's why we're urging the business groups to deal with this. In short, Mr. Chair, we hope to bring this to more normal levels by next month.
Sir, I don't know if you know City Economist for the Philippines, Jun Trinidad. He estimates that the losses because of the port congestion problem, he places it at anywhere between 61 to 320 billion. How would you put a number to it if you have looked into it? Secretary Balisacan?
Sir, we have actually done all stakeholder analysis, but the result of that and the impact of the economy so far as concerned would be out in 1 to 2 weeks. So we'll furnish you about
In 1 to 2 weeks.
1 to
So
2
by the
weeks.
time magkita-kita tayo ulit in plenary, meron na po.
we'll have that
Yung impact analysis.
Impact on the economy.
Please give that to us, sir. In the meantime, Chair yields to Senator Ejercito for his interventions. Senator Ejercito, you're recognized. But the Chair would also like to recognize for the record Senator Nancy Binay. I don't know why she's here, but...
Kasi mas favorite ko si Secretary.
Senator Ejercito is recognized for his interventions. And you may proceed, sir, and good morning.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to the members of the DBCC. I'd just like to ask first Secretary Balisacan, what is, for the record again, what is the economic growth forecast for the year?
6.5% to 7.5%, sir.
Are you positive that this would be attained?
As
Yeah,
we stated,
given the fact that we had a lot of calamities that affected severely the productivity of our agri sector, do you think that it would be attained?
as we explained yesterday, Mr. Chair, we are quite positive that we achieve.
Hopeful.
We are
Hopeful.
hopeful.
Now that there's a looming crisis, energy crisis. Months ago, Secretary Petilla said that there was no cause for worry. But just last month, he was already asking Congress to grant the President emergency powers to deal with the power crisis. What would be the impact of the energy crisis? Come 2015, by April, I think we will be having already a shortage. We will have rotating brownouts even in Luzon. So, do you think this would affect severely our economic growth next year?
It will certainly have an impact, Mr. Chair, but no power is even more serious problem. So our expectation is that this is a temporary thing, as these investments will come on stream toward the latter part of the year, and 2016 things should return to normal.
But as mentioned by the energy sector, by the energy secretary, I don't think we will be able to build a plant, in 2 years' time. But do you think in 2016, some plants would be online already.
The report that we are getting from DOE says that we should have enough power by then, Mr. Chair. It's still quite thin, but with the current investments and hope and assuming that we can get the legislation that we are asking Congress to legislate, which would help us speed up the construction of projects of national significance, then we should be able to get things to normal, Mr. Chair.
But Mr. Chairman, from what I know, it takes about 4 to 5 years to build power plants. And I think for the record, Secretary Balisacan, was there any power plant that was commenced or was completed under the Aquino administration, in the last 4 years?
The committed power projects for Mindanao alone is about 1,778 megawatts, Mr. Chair, and they would come in in various stages. One would
When do we expect
There are
any
some-
of those to be online this year? Or
Well, none this year, but the list that I'm seeing here, some of those would come toward the latter part of next year and toward the early part of 2016.
so we expect the rotating brownouts to stay in Mindanao. So that would likewise affect the economy of Mindanao. Anyway, you likewise mentioned, Secretary Balisacan, of the investments that would be coming. Before I would think that one of the factors why the FDIs have continued to shy away from the Philippines compared to our ASEAN neighbors is probably because of power issues. Before it was expensive power, and right now it's now unstable supply of power. So what do you think, Secretary, or anybody of the DBCC, can we remedy, or how can we attract more investors when the problem right now is the unstable supply of power? Secretary Prisima, please.
Yeah, may I, Mr. Chair? Before I answer that question, I would just like to add to what Secretary Balisacan said earlier. First, on the report of potential power shortage in 2015. That was a result of a scenario, an extreme scenario that was presented by Secretary Petilla with the following assumptions. No? First, an extreme El Nino. Second, the breakdown, unscheduled outage of several major plants. No? So he was assuming the worst. No? And in that worst case scenario, he predicted that assuming all of those happens, in the middle of next year, there is potentially a shortage of power. And as a result of that, to make sure that even under the worst case scenario, the President instructed the Department of Energy to make sure that we come out with solutions. No? And among those solutions would be the repair of the Malaya plant, which is now down, one of the Malayas, which is 300 megawatts. They gave the go signal for one of the power companies to start a gas-fired plant in Batangas of 100 megawatts. Third, they're also looking at working with Congress to see how government can contract standby power, assuming this scenario happens. No? And there are 400 megawatts, for example, available that can be easily deployed, no, within the period concerned. So in short, the power supply is tight, but we are confident that if we bring in those solutions, that we will be able to avoid that. To the second point of Mr. Senator, Mr. Chair, on have there been power plants inaugurated during the term of President Aquino? Yes, among them would include GN Power, which is a 600 megawatt coal-fired plant, another 400 megawatt coal-fired gas plant in Batangas. And as pointed out by Secretary Balisacan, Mindanao will actually have power surplus once the 4 power plants on stream are inaugurated, no?
In 2015.
In 2015, sir. So that includes the Alsons project, the Stayag project, and 2 others whose names I can, Philinvest project, but there are 4, no? It is Luzon that actually I think may face potential difficulties, no? The challenge, I think, moving forward is really to find ways to continue to lower the power costs. And we agree, Mr. Chair, that our ability to attract FDIs, no, is affected by power costs. That's why our strategy nowadays is to attract FDIs where the power cost component is no more than 15% of the cost of production. Because if it's within that range, we find the Philippines still very competitive. But that is something that we need to have a more permanent solution. Thank you.
But Mr. Chair, Secretary Purisima, the problem right now, before it was just the high cost. Now it will be cost and unstable supply. So I just hope that you would coordinate, no, and really find solutions, because I'm really concerned with this power situation that foreign direct investments will be very hard to attract, and those who are already here are starting to relocate elsewhere. So I just hope that the cabinet would really look in and really focus on the power situation.
We fully agree, Mr. Chair. In fact, as I mentioned yesterday, had the Supreme Court not TRO'd the Redondo power plant, which should have been on stream already, then we wouldn't even face this issue. And that's why I said that it's important that Congress and the Executive Department work to see how we can streamline the flexibility of the judiciary in stopping crucial infrastructure projects.
Likewise, just like to ask, probably Secretary Bad would know about this as well. Secretary Petilla is not around, but the Agus Pulangi rehabilitation, is it already, what's the status? Do you have any idea? Because there was, from what I know, there was a rehab fund that was available since 2010, and I think it was bidded out last year. So, can you update us?
We will give you an update, Mr. Chair, but my recollection of this is that this was approved by the President over a year and a half ago in a NEDA board meeting. So we will get you the latest from the DOE and NAPOCOR on this.
Hey, thank you, Secretary Purisima. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going back to probably Secretary Balisacan or anybody from the DBCC could answer. Another cause for concern, no, which this representation pointed out during the Contrasona, is the upcoming ASEAN Free Trade Agreement in 2015, which is less than 6 months from now. I would like to know if what percentage of our economy, Secretary Balisacan, can be attributed to agri, because I think agri will be the one which would really be severely affected by the upcoming AFTA. Ilang percentage po ng ekonomiya natin ang dependent sa agriculture?
Roughly 11% ho.
Around 11%.
But in terms of employment, that's it's about 30 to 33%.
Of the population, of the labor, yes. Anyway, may we know what are the preparations of the industries for the upcoming ASEAN Free Trade Agreement? Were the budgets increased in the past to prepare for this eventuality?
Just to clarify, this ASEAN economic integration has been actually going on for the past many years. In fact, in terms of trade restrictions, tariffs have actually come down to almost zero for virtually all the line items in our tariff nomenclature, and that's also true for the other countries. So the adjustments in terms of border restrictions by way of tariff have more or less been completed. The remaining problems, though, for industries would be the usual issues that have been raised many times, and that is the key constraints to our competitiveness, to our economic growth, and that has have to do largely with number one, the quality of our infrastructure from name it from roads to bridges to flood to irrigation and so on. Second ho, yung regulatory structure natin, including the our bureaucratic responses to the demands of the private sector, and three, the institutions, or the quality of our institutions. These are the really three major areas that time and again have been mentioned in several fora, in conferences, as the ones that inhibit the competitiveness of our industries. I would like to note, sir, that the issue on ASEAN is, in terms of our dependence to the ASEAN, no, is not that much. Our economy is very much exposed to diversified to many other regions. Our trade to ASEAN is roughly just about 13-15% of our total trade. So we
What's the percentage again, Secretary? Can you
12
repeat?
to 15%
12 to 15.
at any given time. So the issue is really whether it's ASEAN or the rest of the world is competitiveness, and and that's what we have been working very hard to for the last few years, sir.
Thank you, Secretary Balsacan. Mr. Chairman, I'm just worried, Secretary, because when it's in full effect next year, cheap sugar will come from Thailand, cheap rice will come from Cambodia and Vietnam. So, do you think our industries are prepared for this eventuality? And how can we compete? As you mentioned, we have competition issues. And the way I see it, I don't think we can, as of this time, we cannot really match the prices, no, of these agri-products. So what would you suggest how the industries would be able to cope up with this fact?
As I mentioned yesterday, the constraints, the problems faced by our industries, whether it's agriculture or manufacturing, are very structural in nature, and addressing these structural difficulties is not something that we can do over time, overnight. In particular, for example, the infrastructure backlogs. Even if at the rate we are going, even as we accelerate the spending in infrastructure from 2.5% of GDP to 5% by 2016, my assessment is that even after 10 years, we would not be where Thailand is now in terms of that build up of infrastructure. So there's so much backlogs that we have to really work on, and that's why in our budget, there's so much emphasis on infrastructure development.
Incidentally, I was here while Senator Osmeña was brought up some points, no, on R&D, on research and development. What percentage do we give for agri, for example?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, I would like to correct myself. In the figure that I mentioned yesterday, I said 0.3%. The latest number we have is actually 0.12% for the entire economy. And so it's much less than what I actually and the rule of thumb, as I mentioned yesterday, for a country like us, is 1% of GDP. Thailand now is spending about twice what we are spending as a percent of GDP. That means 0.25 percent.
So we're just spending 0.12 for R&D.
For 0.12% of our GDP for R&D. It should the ideal situation for a developing country of like us is 1% of GDP.
So
in
do we
real
have
terms,
any-
in real terms, how much is that? 130? 130?
Well, roughly 13
You're estimating in
trillion.
2015 GDP will reach about 14, right?
Right.
170.
170.
170 billion.
So do we have any, would you suggest that we increase R&D so that we can be, so that in the
If-
future we can already cope up, no, with the current prices and outputs?
Really do not have any choice, sir. If you want to be competitive, if you want to raise incomes per hectare or incomes per worker, innovations and sciences are key to that. In the long term, those are the only things that matter. It's really raising productivity, and that's why we, as our neighbors have been doing, we need to ramp up our support for R&D, including human development, because these two go together.
Okay, thank you, Secretary Balisacan. Before I would just like to ask Secretary about a few questions. But Secretary Purisima, because of the energy crisis, the looming energy crisis, would you also recommend any emergency powers for the President? Or
Well,
the DPCC for that matter?
Well, the spirit of EPIRA is to really leave the investment in power generation to the private sector. No? However, in this particular instance, the necessary intervention may not be commercially viable for the private sector and may not attract interest. And therefore, under EPIRA, there is Section 71, if I'm not mistaken, that can be triggered if there is a need for government to step in. And we believe that this is one situation where government will have to step in just to make sure that the worst case scenario that's being looked at will not happen.
With the necessary safeguards, of course, Secretary, because we had an experience with giving a president emergency powers during the time of President Ramos, and look where it got us. We have one of the most expensive costs of energy in the region, perhaps even in the world, because of the IPPs and the PPAs. Perhaps with that kulatilla and with that safeguard in mind, perhaps Congress will consider such a grant, but the executive should ask for it. I frown upon and look down upon actually Congress volunteering to delegate powers that are due and owing to Congress to the executive without the executive even asking for it. I think the first step should be after you have deliberated and decided upon it, you should come to Congress and ask for it. And it's not for any congressman or senator to volunteer giving the president emergency powers when he hasn't even asked for it yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Secretary, but for bottom-up budgeting has been implemented for the past 2 years. No? How effective was it? 2 or 3 years already, was it?
Well, just about a year and a half, because the second year is really 2014. Well, so far it has gotten the interest of many communities and their organizations, as well as local government units. Not very many people are aware that there are conditions attached to the participation of CSOs and LGUs. For example, there's a menu for projects that can qualify. There is a condition for the LGUs to receive the grants. For example, there are good governance conditions so that the grant is not automatic. We continue to strengthen the seal of good housekeeping requirements. For example, you ought not to have any adverse COA opinion. There is a requirement that you should not be having cash advances. And of course, they all have to go through public finance management training. So but since they have bought the idea, this allows us then to help build the capacity of the communities and LGUs. So I think with that interest, then it's now possible to implement those programs. Because at the end of the day, it's not so much the project, because the project is really used as a venue where we can in fact introduce this good governance practices, as well as incentivize the conduct of public financial management trainings, Mr. Chairman.
Do you think it was effective in addressing poverty reduction?
Well, it is still too early to say that, but if we go by the regular programs of government, for example, social protection and social services, in the first semester of 2013, poverty went down by 3%, or that's equivalent to about 2.5 million Filipinos out of the poverty situation. And, you know, Mr. Chairman, if you just project those 3%, and I believe that that's conservative, because every year we increase investments in CCT, in public services, in infrastructure that create jobs and livelihood, there's a good chance that before the President's term ends in June 2016, we should be able to meet our MDG requirement of bringing down poverty below 16%. So I think in that sense, it's significant. But the bottom-up budgeting experience only involves about 20 billion pesos. So it's not that significant. But if you look at the social protection and social services program impact, if you increase that over time, then you can, I think, be able to project that it will have not just impact because of the project, but more so because of the conditions for good governance.
Okay, thank you, Secretary. But, Mr. Chairman, the pressing problems right now, no? Airport congestion, MRT congestion, and sometimes accidents, port congestions. This is attributed, of course, to economic growth and population growth. There are many. These are the main causes of congestions. I'd just like to ask Secretary, but how come infra spending was quite low in the early part of the Aquino administration? Because of the hearings that we have conducted for congestion and the other problems that I've mentioned, it is evident that infrastructure is really what is needed right now to solve all of these problems. So what was the reason why the early part, I feel that it was very, it was very slow?
Well, it was, there were basically two reasons, Mr. Chairman. One is, the need to make sure that, because if you recall, the DPWH, as an example, was one of those identified as
Reforms for
agencies that
needed
had
reforms.
serious problems with leakages. So we need to plug those leakages and improve the efficiency of DPWH. Secondly, there is also a question of absorption, because many people then were saying that we should be hitting 5%. But even if we did at that point, I do not think that at that point the DPWH would have been able to absorb such a huge amount of funding, including DOTC, which I think has even a greater challenge. The third really has to do with fiscal space. Even if we wanted to, at that point, the amount of funds available, because we were just starting to, for example, emphasize tax administration reforms. But all of this began to pick up in 2012 and 2013. So at the same time as those reforms picked up, also the investments in infrastructure have grown. In fact, next year we're poised to be able to invest about 4% GDP for infrastructure spending, and then by 2016 we should be hitting 5% already, sir.
So, Secretary, was that the reason for for the DAP, no, to accelerate spending because for the past 2 years, it was quite slow. So
That's,
was this one of the reasons?
That's correct. It's really a package of policy measures, Mr. Chairman.
But my, Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to ask if the acceleration, if economic we wanted to stimulate the economy or pump prime the economy through the DAP, why did we invest in big ticket items? Why should we? Why did we pass through Congress? No, but binigay pa natin sa Kongreso yung part of the DAP.
Well, the stimulus involves both addressing poverty problems because our growth right now is essentially driven by consumption spending, and therefore if a greater part of the population has very low purchasing power, then that stimulus coming from consumption spending, which I think this year, the first quarter of 2013 has hit 1.3 trillion. If you consider that in the past, the average has just been 850 billion, that's a huge increase in consumption spending. So I think part of the reason for DAP is really to address the problem of poverty reduction, as much as also it was intended to expand and grow the economy, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Secretary. But maybe also, this representation would like to ask the status of big infras, no? For example, North Rail, which was stopped because of investigation. Because from what we see, talagang congested na lahat, no? From our MRT ports. So, can we be updated of the status of the North Rail, South Rail, and the other super highways and the other major infras?
Mr.
Secretary
Chairman,
Purisma or
yes,
Secretary
can we recognize Secretary Purisma?
Yes, Secretary Purisma. I understand, Secretary Purisma, North Rail was scrapped. And have we paid the penalty?
Mr. Chair, not the penalty. There were outstanding loans that were connected to North Rail, in particular loan to China, as well as loan to an EU country. Leah, what country?
So although it was scrapped, parang Bataan Nuclear, we still have to pay for it.
Yes, because it is a sovereign obligation, and yeah.
And I presume because it was scrapped because of the corruption allegations associated with it?
I suppose so.
If it was scrapped because of that, if I may, Senator Ercito, may I know, have you charged anyone for it? I mean, kung skin wrap nyo dahil manipis yung riles, masyadong mahal, overpriced, disadvantageous to the government, I presume somebody should have been charged for it because the end result is we scrapped it.
I will have to get back to you on that. I'm not familiar on the latest on the investigation of North Rail. All I'm familiar with is the financial aspect of North Rail. So we have paid off the China component, and I think there is still a small balance. Both fully paid.
How much
Both
did we
loans.
pay?
200. Leah, 200. Yeah.
But you do agree, Secretary, that someone should pay for this. We're paying this much for something that did not continue, that the Filipino people did not benefit from. Someone should pay. The taxpayers are the ones paying now.
I fully agree, Mr. Chair.
Someone should pay for it, and someone should be sued and go to jail or land in jail for this particular fiasco. Ma'am, can you get the figure? Ballpark? Alam ko mga 500 yan eh. Pero dollars. While they're looking at getting the figures, Senator Herzato, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While we're waiting for the figures, since it was scrapped already, do we have any alternatives? Meron ba tayong pinalit, Secretary Balisacan, or to this because because of our continuous growth that we are experiencing, and especially the population growth. We really are in dire need of this infra. So, iniskat nga natin because of what Senator Escudero has mentioned, because of corruption issues. But did you come up with alternatives or
Sir,
replacement?
we have already one on stream. Initially, the first phase is the Malolos to Calamba, and then the second phase of that is extending all the way to Clark and all the way to the south.
So, itutuloy po yung North Rail. That's good to hear. South Rail also.
Going south, oh.
Because Mr. Chairman, I feel that I hope that you really have to give importance to this, no? Because this will not only be helpful to the economy, it will likewise bring down the cost of living for the population of Metro Manila once we have the effective mass transit. So the status right now is it's ongoing.
Sir, and this Malolos to Calamba is a high priority, sir.
And that's very good to hear. Our Treasurer, Rosalia Dela, do you have already the figures that Secretary Escudero was asking for?
Yes, sir. Your Honor, for the North Rail, for our obligation that we paid to China Exim Bank is about $180 million, but we still have an outstanding obligation, the commercial component to Barclays of about $50 million.
50. So a total of $230 million or approximately 9 billion? Tama ko ba yan? Commissioner Kim, ikaw ang magaling sa math. $230 million, about 9 billion? More or less? Out of curiosity, what did we get out of this, if any? May mga tira-tira bang release ng tren ho doon? May building ho ba tinayo? May bakal ho ba doon? No, but did we get anything out of it? Anything usable or nothing? Secretary Balisacan?
That I know, sir, but when I go to that area, I see some posts that...
So it cost the taxpayers 9 billion for nothing and no one is in jail yet. Siguro naman ho, dapat may makulong dito sa halagang 7 na bilyon. Secretary Purisma, when we see each other during the committee, during the Finance Department hearing proper, can you give us an update on the legal efforts to make those responsible for this fiasco accountable?
We will submit the report in writing to the committee, Mr. Chair.
Please, sir. Senator Hercito?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So given this, since 2010 that Aquino administration has assumed, yung economic growth, the population growth, may forecast naman tayo lahat nun eh. So, I'm just hoping that we will be reactive this time, Mr. Chairman, and sana magkaroon na tayong foresight, especially with the infra. I hope that, well, that's good to hear that the rail projects will be continued. I hope that we can focus in the last 2 years para naman makahabol tayo to keep up with the growing population and growing and of course our economic growth. Just like to ask Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Renares, if you may, I came across some news articles before that yung meron kayong issue with PAGCOR, yung that they lowered down their license fees. Would this affect your collection target? Sabi nyo pa nga plunder yan, di ba?
Sir, no, I'm just saying that when I was asked, they never talked to me about it. So I was never involved in that decision making. Because for me, I believe that you open yourself to possible charges, because you basically use public funds for private purpose. This is to pay off the taxes of a private enterprise. And there's a difference between what we're doing in MRTC, because that one has a public purpose on it. It's a riding public. Whereas in the casino, there's no public purpose. So I just clarified that I was not involved in that decision making. That's their decision.
Para in case magkasuhan, Hindi kasama BIR.
Hindi. Kasi hindi naman kami tinanong eh.
Okay.
Di ba? Yun lang ho. Yun lang ho yung clarify ko. No?
So hindi ho ba, ano? Don't you think that's disadvantageous?
because,
I know you're not involved, but in your opinion.
Yeah, I already said that in the
Okay.
newspaper, that personally, because as far as we're concerned, we're collecting taxes. No, how they pay us, that's not my problem. No, that's the problem of the taxpayer. No, how they reimburse each other, that's their problem. But
So they will just lower their yung operators, private operators will just yung percentage will be adjusted.
No, but my fear only is that if you look at the agreement, it does not assure that taxes has been paid. You already went ahead and lowered it without an assurance that that money that you gave up was really used to pay taxes. No? So you can be out in two sides. One, you lowered your license fee, and government did not get paid. So that's just a concern.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hercito. Senator Nancy.
Magandang umaga
Good
po.
morning, ma'am, and you may proceed.
Good morning. Siguro kay Secretary Abad, yung budget ho ba sa last year, na-compute nyo na how much have we spent?
I think we have the numbers, Mr. Chairman.
While you're waiting for that, Senator Nancy, if I may, just to save on time, hindi naman kay Secretary Abad para sikasuhin na muna niya yan. For Secretary Purisima and Deputy Commissioner Tan, ma'am, I often read in the newspapers na pag may smuggled rice, smuggled meat, smuggled garlic, hinuhuli nyo, pero ino-auction off ninyo. Kaya nga ho may MAV tayo, di ba? Minimum yun, di ba? Access volume. May quantitative restrictions yung pumapasok dito para hindi maapektuhan yung supply and therefore yung presyo at hindi malugi yung mga lokal nating magsasaka, magbababoy at kung ano man. But if these smuggled rice or any other commodity is auctioned off by customs anyway, it goes into the market nevertheless, and usually it's even bought through a third person by the importer himself. Why? Why do you allow it?
Actually, when we do auction it off, it has to go through a process. One is it has to be fit for human consumption, and then also we clear that with DA before we could auction it off. Because
Pero
there
may
is-
sinira na ho ba kayong bigas o manok o garlic? Wala.
Yes, we have.
Napaso na lang siguro. Hindi nyo pinapaso. I mean, it's not fit for human
I think
consumption
yes.
anymore.
Yeah.
But assuming that it is, have you ever denied entry through auction of anything that you seized?
There must
Unless
be
it's
some,
illegal, ah.
Oo, meron
Explosive,
mga
barrel, okay na yan. Pero kotse, bigas, garlic, meat products, you auction it off.
Yeah, otherwise, if it's not fit for consumption, we have to destroy them. And then we also need to get clearance from the rightful agencies. Like in this case,
DA.
DA.
So DA usually gives.
Well, they have to give us parang an approval or a clearance to do so.
Yes, Secretary Purisima.
Mr. Chair, this is a very difficult issue because our position as department is really to raise revenues, no? And if there's an opportunity to raise revenues by selling seized goods, then we will do so, no? So long as it is fit for human consumption, etc. No? Now, given our situation right now, where there are supply constraints, no, there's a lot of pressure on us to actually release the goods to the market. I'll give you an example, Mr. Chair. Recently, we confiscated or seized garlic. No? Our decision was to destroy the garlic, no? And DA supported us in
To destroy?
Yeah, but on the other hand, Department of Trade was adamant because the prices of garlic at that time was quite high, no? And in recognition of that fact, we ended up agreeing to actually auction it. No? And it's going to be auctioned. So we go through this interagency process of consultations. In some cases, the DSWD would tell us, look, instead of destroying food, why don't you give it to us so that we can distribute it to the poor? No? So there's so many of these.
Sayang po talaga. No, I understand the conflict, Secretary, but discretion plays a large role on this particular issue. I would like to see certain standard operating procedures and rules as to how to go about it. And not simply because the DSWD requested it, because if you want to raise revenues, you can auction it off to someone who will re-export it. Because at the end of the day, to begin with, that's why you seized it. It was illegal to bring it inside. We have a law that says they cannot bring it in the country. But through the process of auction, the goods are anyway brought into the country. Hanggang ngayon, bawal pa mag-import ng manok, di ba? Dahil sa bird flu? Peking duck? Saan ho ba ang source ng Peking duck? China lang naman ho eh.
May Canada, may US.
Where can you not import Peking duck from? China. Only China. So, lahat ho ng Peking duck na nakikita ko dito sa mga Chinese restaurant, galing ho yan sa Canada at US o sa Batangas. Sabi nga ni Secretary Prisma, English-speaking ho yung mga Peking duck na yan, hindi yan Chinese-speaking. Can you give us a report on that, ma'am? Because I'm sure you have the documents to show where it came from and where it originated from. Mula nung nauso yung bird flu, hindi pa ho nagkulang ang Peking duck, hindi tulad ng manok sa Jollibee sa mga Chinese restaurants.
With the report.
Please, ma'am. And there's only one source of Peking duck in the country. I think it's in Batangas. And it surely cannot supply the needs of all the Chinese restaurants around the country. Secretary Bad, you have that number? Yeah. Sorry, nag-intermission number lang ako.
Yes po.
Yes, for 2013, out of a total of 2.02 trillion program, we have been able to release allotment to the tune of 2.001 trillion, which represents a 99% release of the budget in 2013. Of that amount of, let's say, of the allotment release of 2.001 trillion, 98.4% of that have been already obligated. And of the 2.020 program for release, 97.5. And of 98.4% that has been obligated, which is equivalent to about 1.969 trillion, about 1.9 trillion has been disbursed.
Sir, when you say disbursed, ibig sabihin yung sweldo ng empleyado sa Department
Paid
of
in
Agriculture, nasa Department of Agriculture
No,
na?
paid already in cash.
Hindi pa tapos yung
Hindi, this is
November.
2013.
13. Okay.
2013. Yeah.
So, pati ho yung capital outlay kasama na ho dyan. Kumbaga
Everything.
nabayaran na yung contractor for a project.
Everything. That's why the disbursement level is 1.88 because this presumes that certain projects are still, they may have been carried over and may have to be paid in 2014. That's why, if you notice, for 2013, for example, the original budget here was about 2.006. But if you look at the program allotment here, it's 2.020 because of the carryover, projects carried over from 2012, Mr. Chairman.
For 2014, ho, can we complete even the first quarter?
For the first half of 2014, we have released about 97%. This is mainly due to the GAA as released document policy that we adopted. But the level of obligation as of last report based June 30 is about 34%, which is not exactly a good number. But I think a greater part of that has to do with the Yolanda because when we put together the budget in 2013 for 2014, Yolanda did not happen yet. And so many of the programs involving about 44 provinces affected had to be redirected because they could no longer be implemented as proposed because of the calamity. The level of disbursement is about 87% of the 34%, Mr. Chair.
So, ibig sabihin, no, yung 34% pa lang ho yung actual na nabayad, yung talagang may cash out. Tama ho ba yan?
Our problem with the reporting is it takes about 4 months to retrieve. We have the latest, as of June 2014, the obligation level has increased to 57%. I think the reason for this is our June's expenditure level increased by about 44% because finally we received the billings for PhilHealth, and so we released 35.5 billion to PhilHealth to pay for the universal health care program. So the level of disbursement of obligation has increased from the initial report of 34 to 57%, but the release of allotment over appropriation is about 91%, and the level of disbursement is about 84%. So things have improved in the second quarter, Mr. Chairman.
And with this figure, by December ho ba, will you more or less have the same percentage as 2013?
Very likely, Mr. Chairman, because normally it's in the second semester that we make up for the delays especially the first quarter was highly unusual because of the effects of that unprecedented calamity, Yolanda. So there's a significant portion of the budget that couldn't be immediately implemented because of the calamity, Mr. Chairman.
Sa savings naman, no, may computation na kayo for 2014?
We have not declared any savings because of the DAP issue, but as soon as we have clarified the matter and either Congress passes a new law or the Supreme Court acts on the MR, whichever comes first, then we should be able then to determine what's the lay of the land insofar as the policy with respect to savings. And then we can proceed to requesting for a declaration of savings from the President. We do need the savings because we have quite a number of expenditures to be made. For example, the preparation for APEC and additional requirements of the reconstruction and rehabilitation program, Mr. Chairman.
So, ibig sabihin ho niyan, hindi niya pa nakakompute yung savings?
Well, we are looking at, for example, many of, if at all, we can look at, it would be easy for us to determine savings with respect to PS, unutilized PS.
Do
But we have,
you have that figure? Kahit sa PS?
we haven't formalized it yet. Everything's stalled because of this decision, but anticipating that decision, we will be preparing, and we would certainly be able.
By the time you face a secretary for the DBM proper?
Yes, that probably. Our problem is not so much DBM, but the reporting coming from the agencies, Mr. Chairman.
No, but I mean the figures and the data. Perhaps I inform Senator
Yeah,
Nancy.
even if it's preliminary, we will do that, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman.
Pagdating naman ho dun sa personal services, which was primarily the source of DAP, tama ho ba?
Yes, the biggest source of savings is.
Kasi napansin ko ho dun sa staffing summary, parang for the past 2 years, it's the same number of positions that need to be filled up, tapos it's the same number of unfilled position din. For example, ano bang agency to? DPWH. For 2014, parang total permanent position 18,572, filled position 15,508. It's the same number for 2015 then, and then kunyari ho sa ano ba agency to? DOE 700, noong 2013, it's 793, 631 yung filled position. 2014, 794, 634 lang din yung filled position. And then, for 2015, we will be giving the same budget for 794 positions. So parang, alam nyo ngayon, parang walang effort to fill up the positions. Ano ho bang policy natin dun sa filling up of positions? Is it the discretion of the yung concerned agencies, or is there a process that they have to go through?
Yeah, that's certainly their discretion. You know, it's not only a question of lack of initiative or interest on the part of the department. For example, when you're trying to attract engineers and lawyers, it's really those types of positions. Government has difficulty getting them, accountants, geologists, doctors. It's very difficult, or even professors in SUCs. So they always try, but recently, for example, judges, that has improved because of the improvements in the salaries. So they always tell us, give us time, we should be able to attract them. But of course, it's not always easy. So in the meantime, for example, with SUCs and engineers, they use those funds to employ them as contractuals, or they use the funds to outsource. So they hire contractual. So it's not entirely unutilized, but really that's the problem. And the rationalization program, we're hoping can deal with this problem, and we just completed it just like last year.
So yung mga different agencies, they don't need to ask DBM
well
to fill up yung mga
because
positions?
the funds, unlike before, the funds were with them. So they could freely use the funds to fill up items. But then the problem was when they are not filled up, they're declared as savings, and they're used somewhere else. So what we did is set up the MPBF.
So when yung mga agencies, when they use the savings, for what purpose?
Well, before they increased their allowances and bonuses.
For the government employee.
For
Yun
their
yung
employees.
pinagkukunan ng bonus na binibigay sa kada departamento, which ceased to exist already.
So ano
Yeah.
naman ho yung masama kung bibigyan natin ng mga government employees katulad ng nasa likod nyo ngayon?
I will answer, Secretary Abad. In the past, each department gave their own bonuses per department depending on the savings they would generate. So iba ang bonus sa DA, iba ang bonus sa DND, iba ang bonus. At pag hindi nakapagbigay yung secretary ng bonus, siya na ang pinakamahinang secretary sa kasaysayan ng departamentong yon. So the bad result of that is departments tend to propose projects to Congress, not that they're still not doing it, intending to use them as savings so they can give bonuses to their employees. Kumbaga niloloko nila yung Kongreso. Again, not that they're not doing it now, but para lang may pagkunan ng savings. Now, ngayon, imbis na yung department na may savings, yung DBM na lang ang may savings.
Yun na nga kasi parang, wala, di ba, if you come to think of it, parang nagpalit lang yung, sino yung may discretion sa savings.
But Senator Nancy, that's one thing that the Supreme Court actually excluded from DAP. Savings generated from PS, correct me if I'm wrong, Secretary Abad.
That's correct.
The Supreme Court specifically excluded it and said that that is okay. Probably because they do it too.
Hindi, so,
But they said that's okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. Remember?
Yes, they did not include that in the...
They specifically excluded it from what they declared to be unconstitutional in that decision.
yun nga lang. So parang lumalabas, nagbago lang yung kung sinong pwedeng gumalaw dun sa PS savings. Am I correct?
It's really more than that because you know, when you declare savings and use it for bonuses, you don't use it for productive undertakings. In this instance, the savings are not used for bonuses.
Pero sayang ko kasi I think pag dineclare the savings yun, si Commissioner Enares can tax it.
Yeah, but then you start a practice that maybe politically make you look good, but then it distorts the whole salary and benefit system of government, which can cause huge demoralization for some agencies that are actually spending their money as the legislature appropriated them, you know, because then you encourage also, there is a moral hazard that you will, as the chairman correctly pointed out, that agencies propose budgets they actually foresee they will not spend and eventually declare as bonuses and allowances. And so you have a bigger problem there in many fronts, Mr. Chairman.
Yun, but yung, going back on, yung pag-fill up, kunyari si, for example, DepEd, pag mag-fill up siya ng positions, he has to write a letter to your office. And
Yes.
then you have to approve.
Yes, based on...
Filling up.
Yes, but you almost always, because...
Were there instances that you don't approve yung pag-fill up ng positions?
Almost always, you know, if it's in their plantilla, we approve. You know,
Pero parang
we-
apparently, konti lang ang humihingi ng pag-fill up ng plantilla kasi parang for the past 2 years, it's the same unfilled, yung numbers is very minimal, hindi nagbabago yung filled position.
yeah, it's...
Sa DepEd, pareho yung 2014 and 2015 kasi yung 2015 nasa MPBX pa yung pera. Kaya pareho lang lumalabas ang number of positions.
okay.
Ngayon in 2015, pala natin makikita yung details ng kung saang school, kung saang region, kung pa lang natin ma-release yung pera pag sinabi ng DepEd, yung specific school
Yeah.
development.
Well, I was just briefed that for some of the departments that are really population related, for example, Department of Education, when they propose to create 44,000 more teachers, let's say for 2015, they eventually would have to tell us, you know, in which schools, in which divisions, in which locations these teachers will be deployed. So, you know, we cannot right away determine those for them. So they have to then go back to us and tell us, which they usually do in tranches, so that we can release the necessary